Hi all, we're going to look now at Yusupov versus Kasparov in the Linares 1992 tournament, round 11. Yusupov playing white kicked off with d4. Kasparov played his favourite King's Indian defence, and we see here the Fianchetto variation being played by Yusupov. So white's bishop will come to g2, and it's got a solid reputation. Now Kasparov played his usual system of just knight d7 here, so he's aiming for a quick strike in the centre with e5. So it seems to be a very logical and straightforward way to play the position with black. So white played just e4, keeping that tension in the centre, not minding if black took on d4 here. So this c6 prepares actually for the black queen to come to b6 to annoy white a bit with this d4 pressure, tempting white maybe to move the pawn forward or take on e5. Yusupov played bishop e3, just supporting that d4 pawn, and now we see knight g4, so opportunistically threatening that bishop, provoking bishop g5, and now queen b6. So this is a very sharp continuation where black's putting more and more pressure on this d4 pawn. Yusupov now played h3, and we see now a very interesting temporary piece sacrifice, which is probably mainline theory. E takes d4, and now knight a4. So black is the queen's attacked and the knight's attacked. So black's losing a piece temporarily after hg4, but white does have double pawns. So black gets the piece back now by this b5, because this knight is trapped on the edge here. So Yusupov plays now bishop e7. And after rook e8, black's pieces are becoming quite active now. And once the piece is returned back, black's going to have a nice position with potential for bishop b7 later. So you'll note that, you know, a lot of black's pieces will be working quite hard after. After bishop takes d6, b takes a4. It does look like quite a mess though, this position. You know, these double pawns here, this queen on a6. The queen's quite useful on a6 though. It's not such a bad on that diagonal, in such a bad square, targeting that c4 pawn. White now has a very interesting plan, which retrospectively looks as though it's just loosening pawns. He supports the bishop on d6, but you know, this pawn's going to be weak later, and Kasparov has a weak pawn on d4. Instead of taking on e5, he actually tries to just support his pawn with c5. Now he doesn't mind about knight takes d4 here, which would be you know, a discovered attack on this rook. So let's have a quick look at this. Knight takes d4, say bishop b7, and now if you know, I think black's fine here. So Kasparov probably didn't mind this position because the pressure has been taken off e5, protecting e5 when white did that knight takes d4. So if black can get that e5 pawn back, let's have a look. Let's say the exchange of bishops and queen f3, exchange of queens, and this would be quite a pleasant position for black. You know, white's still got those horrible double pawns there, and black's got a lot of pressure perhaps on the b file with rook b8 later. So that would be fine for black. So anyway, let's go back. So Kasparov supported his d4 pawn with c5, so not minding about this diagonal. And now b4 was played, trying to undermine this pawn from the edge. Kasparov just took it, and after queen takes d4, Kasparov played bishop b7. And you'll see now, look at black's pieces. All of a sudden his bishops are very nice, his knight's good, his rooks are connected. Black's got a very nice position, and white has these double pawns here. So Kasparov's done well out of the opening here, I would say. After rook ae1, rook ac8, this pawn's also in trouble. White's just committed his rook there, so he doesn't want to move it back. Which begs the question, should the other rook have been moved to support that e5 pawn? Because the way this is played, after c5, this pawn's now weak. Kasparov simply plays now queen b5, so he's immediately just 3 times pressurising the c5 pawn. Now queen f4 was played, perhaps with the threat of knight g5, discovering an attack on this bishop and also this f7 square, this pawn. So Kasparov simply gave up his light squared bishop and now took a pawn, materialistically it seems, but a pawn is a pawn. after bishop e2, he gives the pawn back now, because after rook c1, this knight has to move, and that b pawn is under fire. However, this e5 pawn is still weak, and knight d4 is a very nice centralizing move. So it seems, black's still got a big edge now. After bishop c4, Kasparov just nabbed the e5 pawn, so he's a pawn up now. And this temporary knight f3 check to elegantly get the bishop back. So black's got a great ending, a pawn up. It's difficult for white to hold. Maybe it's becoming technically lost for white. So here we see in this ending, black has a very easy to play position, and Kasparov uses technique now to win this ending. He becomes a pawn up now, but it's about to be 2 pawns up. He exchanged off rooks first, and the bishop finds it very difficult. He's overloaded because these pawns are on other sides of the board, so the bishop's overloaded. Kasparov's able to convert this, and white resigned here. So let's have a quick overview and summary of this very complex King's Indian game. Fianchetto variation. Kasparov striking out, aggressively on the d4 square, and also this knight g4 to sort of prompt the white bishop to venture into his territory. But it all looked good after the smoke was cleared. After these complications, black's pieces were very good, and white's had those horrible double pawns. This b4, undermining white's d4, the d4 pawn. So, but here, Kasparov seemed to get an edge, just winning that pawn, and this ending was just a pawn up, which then he used technique to win it. He eventually exchanged off the rooks with this rook d5 here, and 2 extra pawns was enough to win. So, another testimony to the strength of the King's Indian against Artur Yusupov, who was 2655 at the time. Kasparov was 2780. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.